Next we have pocket aces in middle position. Under the gun +1 limps in. I raise to 50 to isolate him. Under the gun +1 calls for 40 more. We're heads up. The flop is a dream. It's ace king 10 with 2 clubs. We have top set on another flop with a lot of draws. The opponent checks. I've seen him play for a while. He doesn't like folding. Against players like these, I usually bet often, and I bet a lot. Here I down bet to 40 just to keep him in there with a wide range or induce a bluff. The player must have somehow connected. He calls. Since I know where 75% of the aces are, it's likely that he either has a king or a 10. The turn is another 10. We improve to a full house. Under the gun +1 checks. Time to increase the bet size. I make it 130 to go. The player calls quickly. Might even have queen jack. The river is the 3 of hearts. It's a complete blank. The opponent checks. I'm going to take advantage of the tendencies that I've noticed that he has. I'm going to target his holdings containing a 10. Perhaps he'll have a straight or an ace and could think that we're chopping since there's a pair of 10s on board and a king is the highest kicker possible. I bet 500. It's a fairly large overbet. I'm glad I chose a big sizing because it gets called immediately. I turn over the boat. The player shows that he has queen 10 offsuit. He flopped bottom pair with a gutter, then improved to trips. It's a great run out for us to make nearly as much as possible. We're getting some big hands and we're getting paid. It's a good combination. We're up almost 1,500 on the session. Then we pick up 10-8 offsuit in the small blind. Under the gun limps in. He's been limping a lot from early and middle position. The player on my right calls. I want to get involved in hands with him. I call for 5 more. The big blind checks. We're going 4 ways to the flop, out of position. It comes 10-8-3 rainbow. We flop top 2 pair. I tend to bet a lot in these spots with draws. I can finally do it with a strong hand. I make it 30. The big blind folds. Under the gun doesn't believe me, or maybe he has a strong hand. He raises to 80. The button folds. I haven't seen the under the gun player raise very often. There's some chance that he has bottom set. There's also a chance that he's bluffing or only has 1 pair and can't call a 3-bet. I call to see what develops. The turn is the 6 of spades. We're heads up. 9-7 gets there. I check. No check back. The opponent bets 130. I call again. I'm probably ahead, but I'm not certain. The river is the 3 of spades. This is a bad card for several reasons. First off, it pairs the board. The opponent limped under the gun with a big overpair. He has me beat. The backdoor flush gets there as well. And if somehow the player has a 3, I'm also losing. I check, really hoping for a check back. It doesn't happen. Under the gun bets 140. It's a very small bet. Again, I feel like I might be behind. The player raised on the flop, bet turn, and bet again on the river. It's a really strong line. I don't have to be right very often for a call to be profitable though. I put in chips again, believing that they're leaving me for good. But again, they're coming right back to us. The opponent has Jack 10 offsuit. He went for razor thin value the whole way. It doesn't work out well for him. I'm not exactly sure what he put me on. I suppose exactly 10-9. 2 somewhat light calls based on how the hands were played end up making us an extra several hundred. I completely abandoned my resolution mid-session, but everything's going well overall. The win total climbs to 1,800 as we climb to the top of the hand ranking chart where we find pocket aces in the small blind. The hijack opens at 30. I'm concerned about getting the camera ready, and I don't see that the cutoff 3 bets to 90. The button calls to 90. I see him put chips out. In my mind, he's the one that's 3-betting. I cold 4-bet to 300. It's a little on the smaller side since I wasn't initially aware of what the cutoff did. The hijack doesn't want to call for 270 more. He folds. Cutoff is getting a decent price. He calls for an additional 210. He has 1,500 behind. The button folds. We're heads up in a large pot, out of position. Let's limbo this and keep it very low. The flop comes 8-5 deuce rainbow. It's beautiful. The opponent shouldn't have better than 1 pair, and I've got the highest 1 pair. I want to keep his entire range in, including hands like ace king or ace queen suited. I down bet to 250. Could even induce a bluff from a hand that's strong dead or near dead. When I cold 4-bet, I'm never going to improve on this flop. My opponent could think that I'm taking a small stab at it with ace king. The cutoff min raises to 500. There's at least some chance that we would have gotten it all in pre-flop if he had pocket kings. Seems a lot more likely to me that he has jacks or queens and wants to see where he's at, where he has ace high, and he's trying to get me to fold if I have ace high. It's like a, hey, do you really have it raise? If you don't, then this is your opportunity to get out. The player has 1,000 behind. I don't want to scare off any of the hands that I'm completely dominating right now, which should be all the ones that he'll have. I flat for 250 more so that he doesn't have an opportunity to get away just yet. It should be easy to get all or at least most of his stack on future streets. The turn is the queen of clubs. It's about the worst card in the deck. Could be up against a set, or if he has jacks or somehow kings, he's still going to hate it and not want to put in more money. I check. After 20 seconds of thought, the player checks back. He probably would have bet if he turned a set. He wouldn't necessarily have to bet though. There's nothing for him to be concerned about, and he can reasonably get all his money in on the river. The dealer puts out another queen, makes it less likely that I'm up against queens because there's only one possible combination rather than three. I'm not sure that the player would necessarily have played ace-queen the same up to this point. It's more likely than not that I'm holding the winner. If I check and the player bets, I'm going to have to call. I don't want to give him an opportunity to check back with jacks, kings, or ace-king. I bet 500. It's a big bet for the game, but small in relation to the size of the pot. He'll have to call with pretty much everything that he's made it to this point with that I beat, including possibly ace-king since he's getting 4.5 to 1. There's no snap call or jam. At this point, I'm sure that we've got him. I'm rooting for him to put in chips, and finally he does.
Call.
I immediately turn over the aces. He's not surprised to be beat. He gets the chips that he had on deck into the middle for us. We never see what he has, but he didn't make it seem like it was a big cooler, like perhaps he might have if he had pocket kings, for instance. A big part of me believes that we got called very light and made the maximum or close to it. The opponent only has 500 left anyway. We win a huge pot. Then we get a suggestion from another player about what we should call this on the YouTube channel.
The title of this video is going to be Pocket This Time.
Something like that.
Right?
I've actually only had aces twice this session, and I named another video I have aces 3 times not that long ago, so I can't use that title, but I've had some great starting hands, and it's not done. I'm up over 3,000 on the session. Then I look down and see pocket kings in the small blind. The player in middle position raises to 30. The hijack calls. The cutoff 3 bets to 120. This is the same opponent that I beat in the previous hand. The action's on the button. He's the player that I beat when I had aces full of 10s. He's also the guy who tried to bluff me with queen 9 suited. He's on at least his second buy-in after having a big stack shortly after I first arrived. He 4-bet jams for 625 total. This puts me in an interesting situation. There are several large stacks behind me who are still involved and have shown interest already. I could hypothetically call and try to get one of them to come along. This pot's big enough though, I may as well try to isolate. I slide in a cold 5-bet to 1500. Everyone at the table knows that the button is playing wild. It could have a wider range than normal. There's some chance people could think I'm making a play with something strong, but not necessarily aces or kings, just to go heads up with him. The initial pre-flop raiser folds. The hijack lets his cards go. The cutoff has 1800 total and is genuinely contemplating what he wants to do. He may have a hand like jacks or queens or ace-king. Over a minute goes by before the cutoff folds. We're heads up with the button in another very big pot. I'd love to see another low flop. Given how many people were involved in the hand pre-flop, there probably aren't a lot of high cards left. The dealer puts out 9-8-5, all clubs. We have an overpair, and we have the second nut flush draw. Seems like an okay flop, but the dealer's kind of half-assing it for us. I'm pretty sure he can improve, and he does. The turn is the king of diamonds. We drill top set just in case we weren't good already. Is it too much to ask for another king? I don't think so, and neither does the dealer. He puts out the case. No, he doesn't. He puts out the 10 of diamonds. A set of kings should be good though, right? I turn over the hand, expecting to have the winner. Then the first card that the button exposes is the ace of clubs. Oh God, don't do it to me. The player was at least live with the nut flush draw the entire way. What's even more interesting is the way that his phone is positioned against the glass makes it look like he's gonna go home and make a vlog of me making a poker vlog. I really don't want to lose on his vlog and my vlog. Finally, he slightly moves the ace over to show the queen of hearts. He had a 44% chance of winning once the flop came out. I'm glad that turned to 0% by the river. The pockets are stacked over the 5K mark for the second time in 2 sessions. It ends up being the last hand that the player on our right would play, and just by sheer coincidence, it ends up being one of my last hands as well. After all, it's daylight out.